Hey everyone, I'm back. We are still doing our Take It Apart section of Project 5, where I'm trying to create 4 little simple test paintings where I'm trying to deconstruct a contemporary artist or artist of our choice. We're looking at Jörg Dressler here. In this one, I kind of broke down how many really complicated value and chroma shifts that he had. And I know that my final painting is going to be inspired by floral images and wedding ribbons. His is influenced by nature and then these kind of broken down graphic design areas and these little paint splatters. So these are just these little studies where we're trying to break them apart. This little study here, I was looking at a friend's photo of wedding stationery and was inspired to do a low chroma, low value pink next to a more bubblegummy, higher chroma, still low value shift, kind of in similar how these are not strong value shifts. Maybe I'll use that line there later. But I have 2 more breakdowns to go, and it's kind of fun. Like, I don't know where it's going to go or what's going to happen, but the part that's pulling to me now is that I'm interested in the way that these are so highly rendered. And I might, for my final painting, really render my flowers, but I think for now I'm just going to do a kind of little study and see where it unfolds. I have some more imagery of my friend's, where is it at? Sorry. Some of my friend's flowers, so I might use this as inspiration. And I think I'm going to use, so that I have a little series, some of the old paint colors that I had from these 2 without having to start a whole new palette and creating a kind of harmony. And some of our artists that we're looking at, the background is completely and totally flat. So I am going to scoop up these super pale values and squish them all together. What are pink and baby green going to do? They're going to make gray, right? Because they're opposite on the color wheel. But I'm okay with making a really pretty chromatic gray. That's kind of what I'm going for. Oh, wow. Nice. This is from the soft mixing white, which is semi-transparent, the sap green, and the alizarin. And I chose the alizarin because it tends towards the violet side, not the orange side, which is allowing this to look a little bluer gray instead of brown. Okay, that's really pretty. So I'm just going to slop this onto a background. And tone the whole ground. I haven't done one that's all flat. I feel like he does, the guy that we're referencing. I'm excited to see these when I take the tape edges off. I'm running out here. Okay. I don't know how our guy we're looking at is drawing out these super complicated landscapes. Like if he's tracing his photos out, or how he's doing, if he's doing by hand. They look like like they're pretty heavily photo referenced. It says in his artist statement that he is using his own travel photos. But I'm going to do it fairly quickly just for the sake of study, knowing that when I come back to the final painting, I might make some different choices. Okay, I'm going to use this as a reference. And I'm going to think about a little bit like some of what's happening here, just so I can try making that kind of information come to life. I'm going to use just something real simple, like in through here. Maybe I'll use this. Yeah. This also is one of my friend's bouquets, and a different friend is the photographer. And I have permission to paint these. Just because these are little studies, I'm not gonna make it too complex. I'm just looking at little parts. I'm liking the way that our artist that we're referencing uses these little complicated sections in nature. So I'm just gonna kind of grab a little part of this to look at. Kind of abstract. This little edge. There we go. Okay, yeah, I'm not gonna do much. And then looking at the greens and then that higher chroma pink, I think I'm gonna try and mix some of those up. So I'm gonna use a little bit of this brighter green. I think I'm gonna mix into the family of chromatic grays that I used earlier, so I'm creating a kind of harmony. I'm gonna scoop all that into there, like a mother color, if you will. It's a little too toothpastey. I might add a little bit of this thylacine green. See if I brightened it up at all. A little more. That'll work for now. Use this brush. So I'm just kind of getting it, this relationship between these little nature moments and these big flat areas, and seeing how it turns out. Knowing I'm going to take a little more time, quite a bit more time on my final painting. Dancing in a middle green, and then I'm going to change them up. The white-ish gray purple there is pulling up as a wet and wet, which I'm kind of liking. I'm going to switch to grabbing some more of this thylacine. I think I'm going to grab that is a little ultramarine, I believe. Here's some Prussian. I'm going to use some Payne's Gray. I'm pretty sure, yeah, when I look at his landscapes, that there's some 100s, some real darks. So I'm going to use that as a formal set of information. So here's Payne's Gray and Prussian, but it had a little bit of that family color in it. light as dark. I want it to be. But we've talked about this all semester, having that, like the 3 layers can help give something a sense of space. So I'm trying to do those shifts here. I'm kind of working with, I went light, medium, and then dark, which is kind of working backwards, but I'll see if I can add the dark in. So again, not making a direct painting of our artists that we're studying, but using it as an inspiration to say, oh, I'm reminded to use heavy darks, middles, lights. I'm also, now that I'm looking at it again, I see these nice umbers and siennas, so maybe I can come in and mix up some darks that way. That might help my cause. So I'm really analyzing the form, using my own subject, and coming up with my own way of making them. I'm going to use all this Payne's Gray. I have some, I think it's burnt umber, more of the Prussian. I really want a dark. I might throw some alizarin in there to really richen it up and make it deep. And this might be similar to that color he was using. Often, I think we've talked about this before, like that burnt umber, alizarin, and Prussian can make a pretty black that painters like to use when they're painting more naturalistically. I have that Payne's Gray I added in there, which is going to add a coolness to it. Trying to look at my reference to see. Oh yeah, that Payne's Gray really did pull up pretty dark, pretty blue. I want it to be a little browner, I think. So if it's really blue, what could I add besides a brown to make it browner? The opposite of blue is orange, so I could put this cad in there instead of that cooler one, and that would start to really shift its direction. I feel like the edges are getting a little too dry. I don't like how it's working, so I'm going to add a little more medium to make it flow a little better. Let's see if this helps. Yeah, now I can kind of get a pretty thin line, whereas before it was real draggy. Go back to my little bit lighter green. And I think these have all been mixed. I think I'm going to do a little out of the tube with that. I don't remember what this one is. I can tell you. Permanent Green Light. Yeah, and I think I'm going to try and use that just out of the tube to kind of do some little pops, and then I'll paint the little flower. So again, I'm not painting a tree, but I'm still trying to use that like light, dark, little skinny areas next to heavier areas. Yeah, I'm gonna clean this out a little bit, this brush, and then switch to that Permanent Green Light. just a couple little pops of high value. It's too chunky. Sorry. Again, because I think I might be working back into these once I get them going. I'm using the medium instead of the linseed oil on this bottom layer so that it's too juicy. It'll dry and I can put the thick or the fat layer on top of it. I don't want a whole lot of these. I just want a little bit of bright. I don't like this guy, so I change him up. I put too much. I feel like I put too much medium. Can you see that they're like kind of soupy? Okay, I'm gonna leave these alone. And then I'll whip up a warm. I don't know that he's using any warms. Not really, but I can still see that he uses really nice darks, mediums, lights. So I'm going to do my flower in that same way, but I'm going to use my friend's color palette here. Let's see what we can whip up. So it might seem like we're spending a lot of time on these little tiny paintings before we even make the final painting, but the hope is that through this little research investigation and breakdown of other ways people use form, when we come to make our own painting, we have some parts that we really love that we can put back together. Okay, so I really like this corally color. So that would mean I would probably abandon using my alizarin and get more into my CAD. I might mix on top of that just so that I have a little bit of that family in there. That's going to be too much. And then from our color theory and this would be more like kindergarten color theory, the one I'm about to do, but how would I make that more corally? I could add the red, orange, or red, yellow, I mean, to make orange. Well, that's pretty. Let's see if I got it close. That was a CAD medium. Let's see. Yeah, not bad. A little more lighter value, but that's pretty close. And that's gonna look fun next to here or later. Oh, I wanna squish that all over that. Okay. There's a little piece of yellow running wild in there. I can't seem to. Okay. So I'm gonna do like he did with a dark, medium, light. So I'm gonna cut this up. I might use a little bit of this umber. I so rarely use umber. I think I'm using it because I'm looking at something different. Kind of pretty. And then I'll cut that and make that lighter. I'm gonna start here. Too junky. If there's ever a case to use higher quality oil paint, this would be it. So yes, while I had said earlier that I was recycling this paint from an old palette from like a week ago, so it's a little chunkier, it's also that it's really cheap paint. If we're using higher quality paint, if you do love painting, it might be nice to invest in an upgrade. On our website, or on our class syllabus, there's a link to Gamblin paints that are really nice that you could upgrade to. But you don't need to use as much medium because they just have a prettier viscosity out of the tube. These are more like lipstick. It's fun painting on the wet grayscale here. So I was looking earlier at the way he was doing his trees. I'm trying to kind of mimic that. Dark, medium, light. I think in a second I'll switch to the light. Oh, I don't like that. I made that up. And then I think I'm going to squeeze some of that out and really get quite a bit of white, the brighter surface. Again, people might like Liquin for this, but I'm in my home studio with small children, so I'm using the Gamblin solvent free. So that'll be my light, my dark, my medium, my light. Okay, I think I'm going to leave it at that. Just a little fourth study inspired by my friend's bouquet while looking at our formal analysis that we're doing of this artist Jörg Dressler. And I was really thinking about his tree. So again, I'm not copying his tree. I was just copying his form. Dark, middle, light, big, medium, small, big, medium, small, like trying to use those kinds of techniques. And then we'll do one more in a minute, and then we'll have this fun little study that we can pull together. I think on these studies later when they dry a little, I may put these little flowers on top of these and be really happy about how they turn out. So we'll see. Okay, more soon.